This just into CBS Sports HQ. Phil Mickelson and 10 other LIV golfers are filing an antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour. That list includes Bryson DeChambeau and Abraham Answer. The lawsuit also seeks a temporary restraining order that will allow Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, and Matt Wonis to play in the upcoming FedEx Cup playoffs. That event starts next week. 3 golfers qualified for the playoffs before signing on to play on the LIV Tour. All right, let's welcome in CBS Sports golf analysts Kyle Porter and Doug Bell to discuss this. Kyle, I'll start with you here. Just give me your reaction to this news that now the PGA Tour is being sued by some of its former golfers.
Yeah, it's not super surprising. I think we all knew this was going to happen at some point. I think the timing of it is really interesting, JSL, and the reason being, and I saw Jay Monahan released, well, I don't know if he released, there was a letter that Jay Monahan wrote, a memo to players that just got released right as we were coming on right now. And he was talking about the timing of kind of this lawsuit and how LIV and the players that are involved with LIV kind of timed it up with the FedEx Cup playoffs starting next week. Those guys want to play, at least the ones that are qualified that are suing, want to play in the FedEx Cup playoffs. They could have done this a month ago. They could have done it 6 weeks ago. They could have done it for some of them 2 months ago, whenever the PGA Tour originally suspended them from playing on its tour. But they chose the week before the FedEx Cup playoffs, and that was purposeful so that they might get, I don't know all the lawyer terms, but they might get whatever it is you need to get to potentially kind of hold off on all the suspensions and everything that are happening so that they can play in those FedEx Cup playoffs. So I think the timing is interesting. I think we all knew this was always coming. To me, it's not the most interesting lawsuit that's going to happen with this whole entire ordeal with the PGA Tour and LIV Golf. I think the most interesting lawsuit that could happen later on is if LIV Golf sues the OWGR board for potential official world golf ranking points for its members. And I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know if or when that's going to happen. But to me, that's the big one that determines whether all of this succeeds or fails. This to me is it's not incidental. It's certainly momentous and an important occasion, but it's something that I think everybody definitely saw coming. And I don't know that the outcome necessarily changes how all this ends up one way or the other.
Well, guys, it's not the first or last time the PGA Tour has ever been sued, and it won't be the first or last time a lawsuit is filed between LIV and the PGA Tour. This is just the beginning. I've been out on the tour the last couple of weeks, Minneapolis and in Detroit, where the crowds were big, by the way, and excited about the PGA Tour without those players. But regardless, the talk among the players and some of the agents that I spoke to is that the players like Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, Matt Jones, Abraham Answer, these guys were qualified already for the PGA Tour playoffs, and they want to play in the playoffs because there's not another LIV event until Labor Day weekend, and that is an off week for the PGA Tour after the playoffs as they prepare for the President's Cup and the Fall Series. So these players want to play, and they feel they have a right to play. They feel they've already qualified for the PGA Tour playoffs, so they've done enough. And so they're seeking a temporary restraining order to allow them to play. And the decision has to be made pretty quickly because, again, this week, Wyndham Championship, Greensboro, North Carolina, the last regular season stop before the playoffs begin in Memphis in 2 weeks. So something's going to happen very quickly in this lawsuit that was filed today.
Okay, so Doug, the FedEx Cup playoffs, as you mentioned, they start right away. So if the players are granted an injunction, what kind of precedent could this set?
Great question. Great question. That's why I do believe that they've gone to court seeking a temporary restraining order to allow them to play. And I think a judge is going to announce his decision or her decision very, very quickly. And these players want to know because with 1 week to go, they want to start preparing for the playoffs. So, again, if they're granted a temporary restraining order, I think it does set a precedent that perhaps what the PGA Tour did in suspending these players maybe wasn't the right move legally. We shall see. Again, as I've been out on the PGA Tour, and of course Kyle has too, the talk amongst the players, the agents, and other people around professional golf that I've spoken with, they always felt that a lawsuit was on the cusp of happening because they these players who left for LIV always felt that they were going to be allowed to play in the PGA Tour playoffs. We shall see. And what's interesting, a guy like Patrick Reed, he's opted not to play in the PGA Tour playoffs, and Patrick Reed is now playing the next 3 events on the Asian Tour. So not all the players involved in this lawsuit want to play in the PGA Tour playoffs. Some of them do. Others aren't worried about it, but they want to be part of this lawsuit against the PGA Tour.
Yeah, there's so many different things that we could talk about with what's going on here. You know, Taylor Gooch, who's part of this lawsuit and trying to get into those FedEx Cup playoffs, kind of admitted, like, hey, I played in the first LIV event. I didn't really think the tour would suspend me. And then they did. And so I sort of had to play, and was forced into the LIV Golf league that he's now playing in. I think one other interesting thing, JSL, is you look at what happened on the European Tour, the DP World Tour, as it's now called, and it's a different situation because it's a different tour with different rules and everything else. But recently, Ian Poulter won a sort of small courts, I guess it was an injunction. I don't know the correct terminology. Anyway, he was allowed to play in the Scottish Open after the DP World Tour told him and told all their players that they were not allowed to. Him and 2 other players were allowed in. Now, again, that was a temporary thing. I don't think the full breadth of the case has been necessarily ruled on that side, and certainly not on the PGA Tour side, as this just came out today as we're talking about it. But I think I mean, Doug's right. This is going to be super interesting for the future of the PGA Tour. Now, again, like, even if LIV Golf wins, let's say they win this lawsuit and players are allowed to play wherever they want, whenever they want, LIV Golf still doesn't have OWGR points, which Justin Thomas cares about, Jordan Spieth cares about, Scotty Scheffler cares about. That's the way you get into the major championships. That's the way you get into the biggest events in the world. And that's still a problem, whether LIV Golf wins this, whether the players from LIV Golf win this lawsuit or not. So I think that's something that we still need to keep in mind as we kind of look toward the future of what professional golf is going to look like.
Kyle, LIV Golf has taken the golf world by storm. It's forced change, and it seems like the PGA Tour is the underdog here. I mean, is the PGA ready for this fight?
It's a great question. You know, Patrick McDonald, who's one of our really good writers, golf writers on CBSSports.com, he used that terminology, that phrase, that the PGA Tour is the underdog, which it sounds like an outrageous thing to say about an organization that's going to make $1.5 billion in revenue this year, that's giving out, providing, I think it's close to $450 million in purses for the next season. It seems weird that they would be considered any kind of underdog in any situation, but it kind of feels that way right now. And some of that is just the momentum that LIV Golf has created by announcing a new player seemingly every week or every 2 weeks, former major winners, all these different guys. I think the PGA Tour is resting on some pretty tenuous things like OWGR points, like the fact that they believe this is going to hold up in court. If those things fall, then what happens? I think that's the real question. They're kind of putting all their eggs into a couple different baskets. And again, you know, Jay Monahan's talked about this, you know, sort of I'm not saying that the PGA Tour has done everything right. I think there's a bunch of different things that they could have done and even now should do differently that maybe we can talk about at a different time. But in some sense, Jay Monahan's right. When a monarchy of a different country, a government of a large country is trying to take over admittedly kind of, I mean, it's a big organization, but it's not a massive organization. Like, what do you do in the face of that? I think that is, I think that's fair to kind of say about the PGA Tour. But at the same time, I think some of their reaction and some of their lack of proactivity has been disappointing, has been a little bit disheartening as somebody who's a fan of professional golf and wants it to be not just an exhibition and not just kind of the silliness that we've seen at times on the LIV Golf Tour going forward.
Guys, this is like the USFL versus the NFL. They're making headlines, yes, but will they survive? Will they last? The PGA Tour is still the bell cow. I was in Detroit, in Minneapolis. The crowds were enormous. The electricity was there. This is the first time they've gone head-to-head last Sunday, and LIV made headlines. President Trump was there and others. In 5 weeks, there'll be a standalone event in Boston. There will be no PGA Tour. That'll be significant. But again, the PGA Tour expected a lawsuit. Even if they get a temporary restraining order, this is the first of many legal battles. I do think ultimately there'll be some compromise, maybe 4, 5, 6 months from now. But for now, all expected. And I think the PGA Tour certainly wasn't surprised by what happened today.
Doug, if the USFL had that kind of money that LIV has, they might still be in existence. CBS Sports golf analyst Kyle Porter, Doug Bell, joining us to discuss the tour being sued by 11 former players for antitrust violations. We'll certainly be discussing this on the First Cut podcast. Kyle Porter and company, you can download and follow wherever you get your podcast audio. You can also watch on YouTube.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.